Message. Welcome everyone to the Spirit Society of Richmond. I'm going to read a message from the book Living Spring, Francisco Xavier, Cândido Xavier, by the Spirit Emmanuel, number 15, and it's fraternity. By this all men will know that you are my disciple, if you love one another, Jesus. Ever since Constantine's victory, which opened the doors of political hegemony to the Christian world, we have been through many experiences to show that we are disciples of Jesus. We have held renowned councils, formulated their conclusions regarding the nature of God, the soul, the universe, and life. We have encouraged dreadful wars that impose misery and terror on those who could not believe in the tenets of our faith. We have fought over the tomb of Divine Master by spread ravenous fire and brandishing the murderer's sword. We have created commandants and religions posters by distribution poison and winding the dagger. We have lifted fire for burning at the stake, constructed gallows, invented torture, and built prison for those who disagree with our point of view. We have encouraged Yes, that cause animosity between brothers and sisters. In the name of the Lord, who on the cross bore witness of devotion of all humankind. We have built beautiful and sumptuous places and basilicas in his memory, forgetting that did not have a stone on which to rest his head. And today we still nourishing shame and discord, digging trenches of incomprehension and animosity against one another because we interpret the faith differently. Nevertheless, the word of Christ, it is irrefutable. We cannot cling to the words of the good news simply by our outward attitude. Yes, we do need education, which provides the mind just, which preserves order, material progress, which enriches work, and counseling, which support the study of the faith. However, without the light of love, all human activity may be lost in the darkness. We will be accepted as learners of the gospel by cultivating the kingdom of God, which begins in our inner life. Therefore, let us stand pure and simple fraternity all around us by mutually helping one another. The fraternity that labors and assists, understands and forgives amid the humility and serves that ensure the victory of the good. Wherever we are, let us practice fraternity, recalling the word of the Lord, who clear and surely asserted, by this all men will now, by this all men will know that you are my disciple, if you love one another. Sorry, my English. Thank you. Let's go ahead. Start. Continue our study.
by closing our eyes. Taking a comfortable seat, feeling ourselves present in the room, leaving all worries from our lives outside, enjoying a moment of mindfulness. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you so much for this life, for all that we can enjoy while being here on the earth. We thank you, God, for the blessings that we receive, for the visible and invisible hands that help us. We thank you, God, for this life, for our health, for our families, and for this blessed space where we meet, where we can feel the loving presence of our mentors and guides with us. We pray, Lord, for those who suffer near and far, for those who are in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our circles of influence and knowledge. We pray that your messengers of light can travel all throughout the globe, helping them as much as we know you help us. We are humbled and honored to be here because we know each and every time you guide our hands, and the knowledge we acquire can be taken with us, allowing us to improve and to progress each and every day. Dear God, we ask you for your protection, and with your permission, we begin our studies today. Welcome, friends. What a blessed spring day. Beautiful flowers, the enjoyment of the rain. Blessed rain who gives us water, who nourishes everything around us, and ultimately gives us the beautiful gems that give us water into our homes. And if you notice, but we crossed the river was roaring. It's pretty neat to see. But also, the pollen comes with the allergies. But it's the vicissitudes of life. If we don't live this life and have some issues every now and then, we wouldn't know we are in the right path. Yes, this is the 5th Sunday of April, and it is April 30th, which means tomorrow is already May, which is amazing, right? Because it feels like time is flying, but it's mainly because we are a culture to doing, and always there in the future or in the past, not necessarily thinking about today. Because if we live every day, the 24 hours, the perception of time maybe is lower than we're always thinking about what's next. So we continue our studies in the divine laws. And as we know, there are 10 laws, right? There are 10. There's one law, which is the law of God. And Kardec separated it or described it to us in 10 different ways. But progress is the law. Just think about our lives. We started as a very small group, like every Spiritist group, meeting somewhere. And then we moved to a bigger location that gave us a little bit more flexibility. And today we are in our own headquarters. That's progress within our group. That also means people come and people go. That's just the way Spiritist centers and all churches and religious institutions in general go, right? But progress is where we are here to talk about today. So these are the reminders just of all the laws. And the law of progress comes after society. It's nothing that the superior spirits give to us. is by chance. What we do is thoughtfulness. Like we don't think about we say what we say, how we say it, when we say it. But the superior spirits come and they have thought about it, they choose. So they inspire Kardec, even though Kardec was not a medium. Today you are, you don't need to be a medium to have a spiritist group. So if you're listening to me and saying, I can't do it, as you can. You can, in your own home, start the gospel at home and invite your friends. Eventually, becomes too much for your home, and then you look for a place, and then the spirits guide you to different locations. And the progress, law of progress also comes before the law of equality, which is interesting to think about it too. It's every spirit is a unique individual on the universe. There's nobody like us, but we are all equal in God's eye. And that's what we're thinking about as we progress. So, when I say law of progress, because the word is important, but they're beautiful too. Sometimes we take the pulpit and we're like, oh, law of this, law of that. We use lofty words and we get excited, but we don't know what it actually means. So if I said to you, there are 10 laws, and Kardec put this law, and I've already hinted in several, we already studied the Spirit's book, but I already hinted that each law is organized in a specific way. So what do you think it is inside this chapter? Go ahead. What do you think it's there?
It refers to the progress in morality, the progress in intelligence.
Anything else?
That it's a one-way progress, that we improve, we don't regress, we don't get worse, we don't go backward.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. That's all it's in the law, we encourage people to read beforehand too, because we want to remind ourselves. Now, all the laws in the first chapter of the third part, Kardec says that the laws are in our conscience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's inside of us. But we are here to remind us.
Mm-hmm.
Kardec and Spirit and all the missionaries that come in our lives, known or unknown, because a lot of people doing good works to remind us that they're not going to be in the news or have a famous social media account, but they're there. So this chapter is organized in the state of nature, the march of progress, relapsed culture, civilization, progress of human legislation, and Spiritism's influence on progress. So when we talk about law of progress, we don't think that Kardec was going to discuss that there are parts of our society that are a little bit more primitive than other parts of society. But do we need to progress? Yes, no, maybe. Who knows? Yes. Hopefully, when you get to be on the second mountain of your life, as David Brooks says, but when you get to the later life, you'll see that you improved over time. Even today, we can see if you go back 5 years, 10 years, we'll see. So when people say, I'm the same, I never change, we can choose to stay stagnant for a while. But this law also has, the Kardec says, the Spirit says, sometimes God sends us jolts of incidents, accidents, hurricanes or whatnot, so they can speed up the progress. Because as a society, we may choose to remain stagnant, but not for forever. Yes, progress is the law. And we know this because we can feel inside ourselves that we are improving. And we improve both in the moral sense and the intellectual sense. But I want to go back a little bit on the Spirit's book. There's a spirit hierarchy. So if you go to question 100, 100 is like a dissertation by Kardec. And he talked about 3 types of spirits. Didn't come out this way, it was supposed to come in the summer. So they're perfect, good, and pure. That's 3 main categories. And within each one, there are many different subtypes.
Mm-hmm.
You can think all the way to people who have pleasure in doing evil, all the way within us, people who are awakened to the good. Majority of spirits on the earth are imperfect spirits. That's you and I. If you go read the different within perfect spirit, different categories. So he says the influence of matter is greater than the influence of the spirit. Now, goes without saying that we are composed of our spirit, our spiritual body, and our physical body. And living with us, there are the discarded friends. There are communing in our activities from our mentors who are higher than us. They might already be good spirits, to the people who enjoy the activities that we enjoy. If we watch a certain type of TV content, they're there. If you like crochet, they're there. If you like war, they're there watching and communing with us. That's why it's so hard sometimes to leave Netflix or Hulu or whatever else, because they're there. And it's much easier to just passively receive something and it's enjoyable. And in the good spirits is where we're going now in the planetary transition. Is the spirit nature is greater than matter. There's still the need to return to matter and live things in matter, but it might be more attenuated. The preponderance of evil is because we're still in trials and expiations phase. So the hierarchy of spirits also go with the hierarchy and improvement of the world in general. So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec and superior spirits bring to us 5 types of planets. It's not easy to know now that we're going to have to rewrite many things in physics due to the James Webb telescope. So if we look around in our own solar system, only us, we still have a physical body like we have. They already sent the probes. Nobody came back with a dinosaur bone or because we think of aliens as big eye, ugly, evil, but there's also those who are in. So as we progress, there is a renewal of spirits. Those who remain with the effect of matter will be kindly invited to go somewhere else, just like we received folks from a capella. And some might return, some are still here, some will go. It's not a punishment, it's an attunement, because there's actions and consequences. God is going to punish. And these are the spirits we want to be. So when you think about your 5-year plan at work, a 3-year plan at work, you think about your multi-millionaire plan, because after this life, you're going to continue in the spiritual realm and you're going to come back. So we can go to question 100 and see what characteristics of different good spirits are, and see can we work any of these moral qualities in this life. That's how you can hasten or accelerate the progress a little bit instead of halting. And the pure spirits have the highest degrees of purification. Kardec is very condensed on what he says, because we can barely imagine a world that is a little bit better. I will read about non-solar, everybody gets mesmerized, everybody want to live in non-solar. So we can't talk about pure spirits and even conceptualize in our brain what it's like to live on the sun, be a superior spirit, because that's what they are in our solar system. Because we see the sun as plasma, as energy, millions of degrees. So it's not like we can conceptualize what it is to live in a world where Christ is, with all the Christ-like spirits. Mm-hmm. So he only condenses this. But progress is, as Eric says, it's in the definition of the word. You have to move forward. You don't regress. So you don't lose any of those good qualities: benevolence, patience, kindness. And once you know of it, you can go back, because now you move. So the march of progress. The spirits tell us in question 779, humans advance naturally by themselves. So it's innate. The question is innate or is a product of the environment. Not all progress at the same time or in the same manner. However, it's through social contact that most advanced help the others to progress. So that comes in the law of society. We were discussing before we started, different talents. So if we have a talent in something, you can create something for society to enjoy. Someone had the knowledge to create all the tools that I'm using today. I didn't. I'm using it. So my contribution is going to be in a different sector of society. Someone who knows how to play can provide a specific experience to those who are listening who can't necessarily play in this life. But to be a superior spirit, we're going to have to know all of them. So that tells you how long we still have. That doesn't mean you have to know everything: physics, chemistry, biology, music, piano, blah, blah. In the one life, that's why there's more lives. So you have to be good at what we came here to do. That's part of our problem in society. We want to do everything at once. Be human doings, not human beings. But that's interesting because he says we advance as we go through interaction with others. So we're here to help one another pull us forward. And most importantly, for acceptance, is that not all spirits progress at the same time or in the same manner. So even though we wish that people did the things we did, even if they did the things we did, their progress is still going to be different. Because you are you and I am me. So different life experiences, different childhood experiences, and then different adulthood. But we can choose. We can choose to always do the good so we can improve and help others. And the spirits will tell us in several questions that there is intellectual progress and moral progress. And both of them, as Eric mentioned in the beginning, go hand in hand, should go hand in hand. But they also note, this book is from 1857. He notices that back then, they know to us, they remind us, the intellectual progress has improved much faster than moral progress. But that does not mean that we haven't evolved morally. Some of the things we don't tolerate today were some of the things we tolerated in the past. And that's the part of the book that talks about human laws, talks about the necessity of revising those laws over time. And those laws, because the natural law, divine law that we study in the subdivisions, don't change. What Jesus taught 2,000 years ago is still valid today. It will be valid forever. But our laws will change. The laws in Virginia will be different from the laws in North Carolina, and Maryland, West Virginia, DC. Because what? Because there's different types of spirits who live in those locations. If you go to Europe, the culture is different, it's older, relatively to our time frame, right? The spirits might be new, might be old. And we don't know also when we were all created. We may have been created 100,000 years before than another spirit. So there will be a different evolution unless throughout their time they've chose the path of good and then progressed faster. Cool. So that's, and he says sometimes moral progress follows intellectual progress. Once we learn new things, we develop new things, and then we can also follow the moral progress. As we notice things that are unequal in society, unfair to our point of view, because we only know part of the truth, then we can improve. Can we go back in time? I mean, we can choose to stay the same. And some spirits can try. Remember, the living is in both worlds. Go back to the book No Soror. When Europe was going through the transformation that led into the Second World War, the spirits warned them. We know there was spirits from the lower zones inciting the people incarnate to engage. It's not different when we see what's happening in Haiti, what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in places where people go and do the things that they do. That I don't need to remind you here, right? When someone is asked to stop doing something in their yard, and their response is to go shoot the neighbor, they're not alone. And then it's imbalance there, right? Because we talk about freedom and right, but my right ends where yours starts. So we have to think about this too. So there are forces that try to pull us back. They try to say, no, it's you, don't fight it, rebel, you have the right, fight against it. And then there's also potential for collective obsessions that we see, a mass of people have an intellectual development of Germany, for example, following, right? There's two worlds there. Or when we see the help that we receive when we see in the book Planetary Transition, because I don't want those images of despair to be in your mind, but in the book Planetary Transition, Divaldo Franco psychographed the book, and that book we see the hundreds and thousands of spirit missions that come to help the people from the tsunami. They weren't victims. Explains the majority of those people were in that area for a specific reason. They had to go through the collective suffering, but the help, especially nowadays, because part of our despair is that we know what happens. A leak of gas somewhere in India, and we know. And there is someone who does something in Africa, we know. In the past, we didn't, because it would take a newspaper, it would take a telegram, it would take something that will be, maybe we'll know, delayed. And then nowadays it's more instantaneous. But we are also under the influence, of one kind of spirit or another. So can we regress? The spirit on question 778 says, no, humanity must progress without ceasing, and it cannot return to the state of infancy. It progresses because God wills it. So we can't just say, no, I'm going to stay. We can't. It's part of your free will. No. Dispel the myth that everybody plans their reincarnation to the T. Right? Some spirits are not in condition in the spiritual realm to sit with their mentors and be like, oh yeah, I did this, I'm going to do that. Sometimes their choices in the past led them to a situation of suffering, and they have an awakening and they agree to reincarnate, and the higher forces are so benevolent that they help that spirit. But based on your past actions, you have something to do today. But the reincarnatory plan is not a to-do list necessarily like we do on the earth. It's a map. It's like a broad. But the superior spirits are always constantly doing the rerouting, like the GPS. The GPS says, turn right. You're like, no, I'm going this way. Turn left. No, I'm going this way. And they're rerouting, rerouting. Because we choose every day, millions. You couldn't predict everything in the reincarnatory plan, because it would be impossible to do that math predict. Because everything, if I choose to speak with or without microphone, like that's not on my reincarnatory plan, not the details, but the main part. You should reincarnate and be with this person and raise this family, and those are the spirits you're going to receive. And you're born, you grow up, and decide to marry someone else. You deviated from your plan, but it's an offer that God does it. But we don't go back. We're never going to reincarnate in the bodies of animals, in the body of others. Billions of people, trillions maybe, I don't know how the calculation, have already discarnated since the beginning of humanity. Agree? We're just renewing the components, right? The components that make matter, that makes our bodies. But the spirits are not necessarily being born, they're created at the same time of conception. They're existing spirits linked to that zygote. And that's how we see the dark forces trying to bring us back, to allow people to be able to take those lives before they come. Then the fight is free will, choice, life. Right? So that's the tug of war, because the spirits who don't want to go with the progress, they know they will be invited elsewhere, so they're trying to invite us to stay barbaric, doing the things that we do. But that's okay, because Jesus is at the helm. There's no problem with it. Can we halt the progress? We can say as a humanity, we're not going to go forward. We're going to slow it down. We're comfortable where we are. We like the things we like. But then the spirits will tell us that sometimes God sends us things to waken us. For example, COVID. And these questions about does the perfecting of humankind always follows a slow progressive march? It says there's a regular slow progress that results from the force of things. Think about us. We live here for 80, 90 years on average. Then we spend some time in the spiritual realm. And then our parents have to come first. And then we reincarnate. That's like 200, 300 years. So even if you improve a lot in one life, it takes a bunch of spirits to return better for that culture to change over time. It's not like you wipe this slate clean, all spirits are going to incarnate somewhere. It says here, whenever a culture does not advance quickly enough, from time to time, God causes a physical or moral jolt that transforms it. And then Kardec's comment says, humans cannot remain forever in ignorance since they must reach the goal set by providence. And that's why, unfortunately, our limited view of this life and the forgetfulness of the past makes us feel like, oh, we are not progressing enough. And that's the next part. Why does it feel like we're regressing? Part of it is that we now have access to the things that happen elsewhere almost immediately. Because in the past, you knew poor people who are poor, people who are rich, people who died of accidents, people who discarnated in different ways. But that knowledge may not reached us. Now it reaches us. And sometimes can make us feel so powerless to do anything about it. But your power is your circle of influence. Where can you in your neighborhood, in your house, do the best? Just like we hear and know that there is hunger.
Mhm.
Then what we do, we collect donations to take to the shelter. And then we'll take them, in 2 weeks, we'll take more donations in the shelter. We know there's people in nursing homes who need help. And then we are blessed to have the opportunity to go once a month to help them. It's only 2 hours for us. And super simple. We're not doing any performance. We're not doing anything Cirque du Soleil related. We're just there to help them with puzzles. And it means the world to them. It helps us too, because it makes us think, I can give up once a month, this amount of time to help someone else. And work within our lives so that we don't have to be in that situation when nature talking to us. They don't worry. They don't worry if there's food tomorrow. They worry about today. And that's the beauty of it. But the spirits have a better wording than I do. So I'm going to read this small piece here. So this is the question. Humanity is perverse. Actually, can you read this?
Humankind's perversity is very great. Doesn't it seem like humans are regressing instead of progressing, at least from a moral point of view? Answer: you are mistaken. Observe the whole closely, and you will see that they are advancing because they have a better understanding of what evil is, leading them day by day to reform their abuses. The excesses of evil will make them understand the need for the good and for reforms.
It's talking about perspective, right? Because if we go back and look, yes, we still have a lot to do, but we've improved. Not everywhere, not all the time on the earth. But the society only improves when the spirits within it improve, because we are the collective sum of everything. And that's why I say if there is still one person suffering, one child hungry, one person without education, everybody is still suffering, because we have thoughts that connect. That's why we can't be selfish. What is the biggest obstacle to progress according to the spirits? What do you think is the thing that is keeping us from progressing fast?
Selfishness.
And there's 2 things. I say it's the biggest obstacles.
You like the will or motivation
Mhm.
to?
It's one of them. What else? which comes down to the answer is pride and selfishness. We know what we need to do, but it's more comfortable to do something else. We know we need to be kind, but then we go back to our pride, I want to help. Because imagine how hard it is. We see people in certain situations, and we think about how could they get to that point. And then you watch documentaries about hunger or homelessness, and how humiliating it is to ask for help. Right? So we need to be aware and open and empathetic to be like, where can I go and where can I look to see the help before people need to ask? This is part of what people do in outreach in homelessness. They go to the people. It's very humiliating to ask for. Even when you are in school or at the grocery store, you don't know something. Nobody wants to admit they don't know or they know what the things are. They would rather spend 3 hours looking than ask. It's much easier to ask. In the book, Jesus in the Home by Neil Luce, there's a story there that came to mind. That Jesus is talking to one of the women in the group. And he's asking her about her day, because that's what Jesus did. And that's why I bring up some examples of her day, because Kardec also addressed current events. He's asking her about, she's opening her heart to what's happening to her. And she's saying, well, but this is happening, just like we do. Go to the book. It's 2,000 years ago. We'll still do it, right? When we get together with one another, we tend to focus on what's like. And he can see, Jesus can see that she's becoming a little upset. She's going to start crying. Then he goes and he stops her before she gets to that point. So she doesn't have to go through that experience in front of everybody. That's charity. Because when we prevent people from having to ask, but that takes awareness of going around the world looking for that person who could use a smile, a good morning, someone at school. A lot of children these days in schools are homeless or they don't have the resources. And then so we see someone being made fun of because they don't have the right clothing. We do that. When I was in school, we did that too. Maybe we can be the friend of that person, or there are schools now, they have homeless. It's more in the West Coast because it's more prominent, but homeless is everywhere. They have offices in school where they have a laundry area, and they have food, and they have clothing, school materials. So the children can go there. They know who they are. They live on the motels and the trailer parks. Then they can discreetly go to the outreach person, get what they need, get their clothes washed, so they don't have to go through the experience of being made fun of because they don't have clean clothing. And that's something we can keep an eye out for the people around us and see what do they need. Sometimes they just need a friend. Sometimes they need to be, they're sitting alone. Maybe they want to sit alone, but maybe we can go and be with them. Just kind of like a St. Francis, right? These are older folks. Well, we invite them, we let them, and then maybe they don't, we offer. Maybe they want to do puzzles. Maybe want to draw. Some people want to paint. Some people just want to talk, and then we reach them where we are, where we have to be, not in the pride and selfishness business. All said, we are progressing, we are improving, we have a unique contribution. Whatever your skill is, there's something in this world that you can do for others. Well, why does Spiritism influence on progress? That's the last part of the chapter. Do you think Spiritism can influence in the progress of humanity? Yes, no, and how? Maybe yes, how?
I think it helps, it gives us a counterbalance to our selfishness and our pride. And it gives us some long-term thinking. And Spiritism's teachings of, well, what you don't learn and develop and improve in yourself this time, well, you're going to get another chance to do it. So
sometimes without the Spiritist knowledge in the future, which makes it harder. In a different planet, not with your family members and friends, and not knowing of Spiritism. Imagine being born in a place in the East that doesn't know of Spiritism. They have their own traditions. What if you get reincarnated as in China? Now the Spirit's book is in Chinese, so if you get now it is in Chinese. So if you get reincarnated there next life, it's there. Now if people are allowed to read or not, it's a different conversation, but it's available. And that's actually a message in the book among brothers of other lands. There's a rabbi that comes and retells the parable of the talents. And one of the people in the parable receives Spiritism. And he's like, you gave money, education, prestige to these people. You gave me Spiritism. And the servant says, the master says, now you go back. You're going to return. There's a reincarnation. But without this tool. Those people didn't do more because they didn't know. A lot of people we see doing things that they don't know. People are more ignorant than evil, Jesus said. Mm-hmm. So the spirits tell us the spirits will become a common belief will mark a new era in the history of humankind. How do we know this? Because people will be more aware of mediumship. And we are. If you look at the amount of books on developing mediumship, guardian angels, talking to your guides, and then you go from truth to trickery. There's all levels, but people are aware now. The Hay House, Louise Hay, we indebted to her because Dwayne Dyer, one of them, Bruce Lipton still alive. They talk about there's more than this physical. There's more than going to fashion shows, concerts, travel. When the needs of the people is doing, why are we doing what we're doing? But we also know from the Gospel according to Spiritism that in different planets, the exchange is natural. Once people know of mediumship, the exchange will be more, because as we evolve, the mediumship channels will be developed, will progress. Next life, more people will be able to have that exchange. Nowadays, when there is exchange, we are like, oh, it's hallucination. Oh, it's mental illness, right? But in the future, that's going to be more evolved. And in planets where the spirit's more ethereal, when life is longer and they don't have what we have, then they can communicate with their mentors more easily. Jesus communicated with God more easily. So where he comes from, they talk to one another from far. They talk to God more often, directly, receiving orders. That's what superior spirits do. They also say Spiritism will contribute to the progress by destroying materialism, one of the swords of society, enables people to comprehend where the true interest lies. And that's what we say. When we can have less, we can live with less, we have more to give, more time, less caring for things, more resources to give to others. And that's a progress too, because when we are young, all we want is the nicest things. That's me. We want to use the brand name pants or whatever. And then one time you like Costco clothes. When you get to Costco clothes are good enough, you're in a different, because like you need to clothe the body. You know. You don't need to watch the Milan show, Paris show, whatever the fashion show. But at some point we did, you know. So the materialism is do more, go on that vacation, go on the cruise, get the newest car. Eventually, the earth can accumulate. The earth cannot contain all of these. But by knowing that we are more than the physical, that we're going to return, we can think, what can I do today that is better for me, but also while I help others? Not saying we neglect ourselves and our body and our families, but it's about how can I grow through helping others. we're talking about Jesus in the book, Jesus in the Home. He did that on that chapter. He helped the woman. He interjected when she was about to have a moment of more vulnerability. But in other chapters, what he did was he allowed people to talk, but then interjected when they're going crazy. In others, he remained silent because there was nothing for him to add. So sometimes not saying something that will hurt someone, or pushing their buttons, or nag them is charity. So it's a very complicated, because if you're not aware, if you're just going by the physical, millions of people go by their physical needs every day. They wake up, hopefully they brush their teeth and take a shower, they go to work, they eat, they travel, they wear on the phones all the time because they're designed to grab your attention. They come home, have dinner, sleep, return. No awakenings, no helping. But because we're designed, the environment is designed for that. But the new generation is not like that anymore. They want meaning. You want a job that is fulfilling. You know what we've done to the planet, so you want companies to think about that. You want sustainability. I was just reading today about a mall in Sweden. Thank God to the feed, because I came on my feed and looked. There's a mall in Sweden that's all secondhand. It's a whole mall, like just a mall, like you go to shop on. But everything inside is secondhand. Now on Facebook, God bless Facebook, and because during the pandemic, that's how we communicated with others. There are groups that are called Buy Nothing groups. They're local groups. You can have to sign in. You have to prove that you live in the neighborhood. People have access to who you are. And you can say, I don't need this. I did this for the first time this weekend. I got some puzzles for us. I said, 100 puzzles, adults, got 2. Beautiful puzzles, because I said, it's hard to find. I already bought everything there was to buy. But 100-piece puzzles for adults is hard. For children, there's plenty. But if you are an adult, you don't want to be doing Elsa puzzles, right? You have to be sensitive to the community. I put out something I didn't need in my house. 2 hours, it was gone. Someone, I put it on the porch and took it. The same way you can receive. So we're evolving. Before it was just like, go buy another one, trash it. Now we're like, this generation can see that there's so much waste. Food waste, people go dumpster diving, they donate what they find. And then we can go for those companies and be like, why are you throwing all this stuff away? There are food apps where you can buy at a discount food from restaurants that would otherwise be thrown away. I wish I could, flash food, I think is one of them, something to that extent. So the restaurants, you sign up for the app, and at the end of the night, you can go and be like, oh, the Thai food place has this, and it's discounted, but they wouldn't otherwise be thrown away. So we are coming up, the people who can build that, because I can't. The new generation is asking for that. But transformation can only be realized with time, step by step.
Mhm.
We were even joking this morning, we have to have like a band. So it's like we start by like A, B, C, D, E, F, G on the piano, on the guitar, and then you build a chord, and then you learn a metronome, and then you practice, even if it's happy birthday. And eventually you get to play, as we're going to do shortly. But it's step by step, We're just saying, also it makes you feel good. In the book, Spiritism in the Arts, Leon Denis brings the importance of Spiritism. And we have one of the books of Andrea Louise, which I believe is in the domains of mediumship, where the guy comes in and takes a stage. We don't have a stage here, but imagine if he came in the frontier. As he plays, there are showers of heavenly light in the spiritual realm coming to us. We may not be able to be in front of a crowd and talk. Then we can read a message or we can practice privately until we get to the point. But it always starts with a small seed. and then we grow and we grow. But we have to trust. So when we think about where we are in our lives, where we're living, how the planet is, we don't despair because we know that we are progressing, we're getting better slowly. So the ills of the people will come. And that's what Kardec says, I believe, in question 794, 23. It's called about civilized societies, which is an interesting word. Oh, this is the law. That's why it's not there. Because, law of freedom, we talk about free will. Here we go. I'll mark this one too. So how do we recognize a complete civilization, completed, meaning the civilization has evolved to be morally and intellectually high? So you recognize it by its moral development. It says you only have the right to truly call yourself civilized when you've finally banished the vices from your society that dishonor it. When you finally live as brothers and sisters by practicing Christian charity. Because we think we're civilized, because we're not living in the woods perhaps, or we have invented the fire. But we have to banish those ills. And we are getting better and better each and every day in our lives. Cool. Any comments or questions before we feel like we can progress now fast? Before we move on to music?
What was the question of the last part of the 798?
I think it's 794. Let me take a
794.
look. Yes. Yeah, because it talks about the different cultures on the planet. You know, there are people living that I don't want anybody to take this as I'm saying they're primitive, but there's people living in simpler conditions in the Amazon, for example. Those people have so much knowledge, for example, of medicinal plants, that the scientists are going there to, and a lot of other things we take were first found in plants. How to live in communion with nature. Yes, they don't have an iPhone, they have the clothes we have, they have different, but that doesn't mean they're not evolved. Just different experience that person has to have. But we've used this distinction at times to subjugate people in like coming and take your land, take you because you're primitive and I'm not. And that's partially what he's discussing here. 793. And he says, Kardec's comments that civilization goes through stages of development like everything else. It talks about there's infancy, adolescence, and adulthood. And we are in an adolescent to adulthood phase. We're still rebellious. We still want to be different. We still have a lot to improve. And then when you're mature, you're more like a divine world, but a regenerated world or a joyful world. But, we can't go back to infancy. Infancy would be where the hominids are, the beginnings of the spiritual development, where matter is it's all about survival. And that's the balance we see in the world, survival versus improvement. All right. So now we'll go ahead. Enjoy.
Ready to jump? Again? Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hate, and let me may bring your light. Where there is injury, your pardon, Lord. Where there is doubt, through faith in you. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. There is darkness, only light. Where there is sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It's a harmony that we are part of. Even torment that we receive. And dying that we are born to eternal life. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to be consoled as to console. To be understood as to understand. To be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a shadow of your peace.
I like that song. Very good.
That I have in the book for.
Please join me in our final prayer. Dear Lord, mentors, spirit guides, let's be thankful for God's creation. Let's be thankful for all the work of the superior spirits, how they strived over years and incarnations to develop their higher moral status and are now involved in helping others. Please give us the strength and wisdom to make the decisions each day that we know are right. Please help us purify our thoughts to make our daily lives easier to help others, easier to learn, easier to grow and support others grow. Please help us be understanding and pardoning of others. Please help us develop fraternity and bonding with our friends and neighbors and family so that we can all together support each other in growth. Please bless the sick, the needy, the homeless, and may God's love touch everyone. So be it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We will see everybody next week.